A nation forged, the genesis of gangs in America. The birth of the United States was a time of immense change. It was also a time when the seeds of gang violence were first sown. Cities like New York and Boston saw an influx of immigrants. These newcomers faced discrimination and poverty. They formed social clubs that morphed into criminal gangs. The 40 Thieves operated out of the 5 Point slum. These gangs engaged in petty theft and violence. Lacking law enforcement, cities provided fertile ground for gangs. The 40 Thieves left an indelible mark on the 5 Points neighborhood. Their exploits, often romanticized, reveal the brutal realities of gang life. These early gangs highlighted the challenges of rapid urbanization and social stratification. Prejudice and discrimination created a sense of alienation among immigrants. This alienation fueled the growth of gangs, offering a sense of belonging. These gangs foreshadowed the recurring role of social and economic factors in gang violence. The Industrial Revolution brought unprecedented advancements to the United States. However, this progress came at a cost. Factories and urban centers attracted waves of immigrants, often finding poverty and exploitation. Overcrowding and poor sanitation bred crime and violence. Gangs expanded their reach and influence, engaging in extortion, racketeering, and control of illicit markets. New immigrants provided a steady stream of recruits. Competition for resources led to increased violence. The Industrial Revolution exacerbated social and economic disparities. The plight of the working class was often ignored. This neglect marginalized communities further. Economic progress without social justice has devastating consequences. The 1920s witnessed the rise of organized crime in America, with the enactment of Prohibition serving as a catalyst. The ban on alcohol production and sale created a massive black market, and gangs were quick to capitalize on this lucrative opportunity. They established elaborate networks for the production, distribution, and sale of illegal liquor, amassing enormous wealth and influence in the process. The competition for control of this illicit market led to a dramatic escalation in gang violence. Notorious figures like Al Capone and Bugs Moran, leading their respective criminal empires, engaged in bloody turf wars that terrorized cities across the nation. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre of 1929, where 7 members of Moran's gang were brutally murdered by Capone's men, remains a chilling testament to the brutality of this era. The Prohibition Era demonstrated the unintended consequences of attempting to legislate morality. The ban on alcohol, rather than curbing consumption, had the perverse effect of empowering criminal organizations. It highlighted the inherent limitations of prohibition as a policy tool and underscored the complex interplay between social, economic, and legal factors in shaping the landscape of crime and violence. The aftermath of World War II saw a resurgence of gang activity in the United States. Returning soldiers, many suffering from trauma and struggling to reintegrate into civilian life, found themselves drawn to the camaraderie and purpose offered by gangs. Simultaneously, cities experienced another wave of internal migration, with African Americans moving north in search of better opportunities. This demographic shift led to increased racial tensions and competition for resources, creating a volatile environment where gangs thrived. Ethnic gangs, often formed along racial or cultural lines, emerged in urban centers across the country. These gangs, such as the Latin Kings, Black Pea Stones, and various Asian gangs, sought to protect their communities and interests in an often hostile environment. The post-war period underscored the role of social and economic inequality in fueling gang violence. The struggles faced by marginalized communities, compounded by racial discrimination and lack of opportunity, created a fertile ground for the proliferation of gangs. These gangs, while often engaging in criminal activities, also provided a sense of belonging and protection for their members, highlighting the complex interplay between criminality and social need. Section 5. The 1960s to 80s, mobility, weapons, and the rise of infamous gangs. The social and political upheavals of the 1960s and 70s had a profound impact on the trajectory of gang violence in America. The civil rights movement, while ushering in long overdue social change, also exposed deep-seated racial tensions. The Vietnam War further divided the nation, and the rise of drug culture provided a lucrative new market for criminal organizations. It was during this tumultuous period that 2 of the most infamous gangs in American history, the Crips and Bloods, emerged in Los Angeles. Initially formed as social clubs, they quickly transformed into violent criminal enterprises, engaging in drug trafficking, extortion, and brutal turf wars. Their rivalry, fueled by a complex web of social, economic, and personal grievances, left a bloody stain on the streets of Los Angeles and beyond. The rise of the Crips and Bloods marked a turning point in the history of gang violence in America. Their brutality, coupled with their embrace of drug trafficking and access to increasingly lethal firearms, ushered in a new era of gang warfare. Their story, while rooted in the specific social and historical context of Los Angeles, resonated far beyond the city limits, becoming emblematic of the escalating violence plaguing urban centers across the nation. Section 6. The 1990s. A boiling point of gang violence and social unrest. The 1990s witnessed a horrifying surge in gang violence across the United States. The crack cocaine epidemic ravaged inner-city communities, fueling gang recruitment and exacerbating existing tensions. The easy availability of firearms, coupled with a sense of hopelessness and despair, led to a dramatic increase in homicides and other violent crimes. The Los Angeles riots of 1992, sparked by the acquittal of police officers in the beating of Rodney King, exposed the deep-seated anger and frustration within marginalized communities. The riots, while multifaceted in their origins, highlighted the strained relationship between law enforcement and communities of color, further fueling the cycle of violence and mistrust. The 1990s served as a grim reminder of the human cost of gang violence. The lives lost, the families torn apart, and the communities shattered by violence left an indelible mark on the national psyche. It was a decade that underscored the urgent need for comprehensive solutions to address the root causes of gang violence, from poverty and inequality to lack of opportunity and systemic racism. Section 7. The 21st century globalization and the modern face of gangs. The dawn of the 21st century brought new challenges and complexities to the fight against gang violence. Globalization, while connecting the world in unprecedented ways, also facilitated the expansion of transnational criminal organizations. Gangs increasingly collaborated with drug cartels and other international crime syndicates, expanding their reach and influence. The rise of social media provided gangs with new tools for recruitment, communication, and intimidation. They used these platforms to project an image of power and glamour, luring vulnerable youth into their ranks. Law enforcement agencies faced the daunting task of adapting to this evolving landscape, employing new technologies and strategies to combat gang activity in the digital age. The 21st century presented a new set of challenges in addressing gang violence. The globalization of crime, coupled with the proliferation of firearms and the pervasive influence of social media, required innovative and collaborative approaches. It underscored the need for international cooperation, community engagement, and evidence-based strategies to effectively combat the evolving threat of gang violence. Section 8. A legacy of violence, examining the roots of gang culture. Throughout its history, gang violence in America has been inextricably linked to issues of poverty, inequality, and social exclusion. From the slums of Five Points to the streets of South Central Los Angeles, gangs have flourished in environments where opportunity is scarce and hope is in short supply. The allure of gangs, while often romanticized, lies in their ability to provide a sense of belonging, purpose, and protection in the absence of positive alternatives. For many young people growing up in marginalized communities, gangs offer a perverse sense of family, loyalty, and identity that is often lacking in their lives. Understanding the root causes of gang violence is essential to developing effective solutions. Addressing issues such as poverty, lack of educational and employment opportunities, and systemic racism is crucial to breaking the cycle of violence. Investing in communities, providing support for at-risk youth, and promoting social justice are all critical components of a comprehensive approach to tackling this complex and persistent problem. Section 9. Looking forward. Breaking the cycle of gang violence. The fight against gang violence is a marathon, not a sprint. It requires sustained effort, collaboration, and a willingness to address the underlying social and economic conditions that give rise to gangs. Law enforcement has a role to play, but it cannot be the only solution. Community-based initiatives focused on prevention, intervention, and reintegration are essential. Providing young people with positive alternatives to gang involvement, such as mentorship programs, job training, and educational support, can make a profound difference. Investing in underserved communities and promoting social justice are critical to creating an environment where gangs no longer thrive. Breaking the cycle of gang violence requires a collective effort. It demands that we acknowledge the humanity of all individuals, regardless of their circumstances. By investing in our communities, promoting social justice, and offering hope and opportunity to all, we can create a future where gangs are a relic of the past, not a present-day reality.